episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. This is Zach, as always, and with me is Matt. How's it going, man?
95 degrees and sunny still in Indiana, so can't complain.
Mm-hmm. We're up to 90 here in West Virginia. We're getting your heat tomorrow, actually, as it comes across.
Oh.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Scottish DNA in me, so when the heat comes, I kind of die inside. So that's my little dirty secret. Anyway, we are back again. We have a special guest tonight. Owen McIntyre is with us, Rogue Reptiles, and as everyone knows him, from Morelia Python Radio, the flagship podcast of the network. So we'll be talking all things Colubrid with the Python guy tonight, which is going to be fun. But before we get to that, we'll do a quick session on our updates. Really hasn't been that long since we recorded. I don't know if it's even been a week yet. But that being said, a couple things happened in my universe. As y'all know, the King Snake obsession continues. And I got the most anticipated clutch for me out of all the new lamps was I've really gotten into locality Florida Kings. They're pretty cool from a nerdy natural history standpoint. And there's one locality that comes from northern Florida, Pinellas Kings. They're kind of a perfect integrate between a classic chain king and a Florida king. And I picked up a pair of those from David Kelly and got them like midwinter, brumated them, thought, what the hell, we'll see if this happens. And my female, she tricked the hell out of me. I didn't know she had any eggs. I opened up the drawer and there were 5 eggs in there. I was like, this is special. These are the ugliest damn eggs ever. I was convinced that they were slugs, and I have a habit of just candling everything. And sure enough, there were veins and an embryo inside. So I have no clue if these things are going to go the distance, but that happened yesterday. So that's one new thing that's gone on with me. And then I have story time with Zach. So I have some false water cobras that I've been raising for the past 3 years. And I bought from really cool caging company. I'll totally plug them. Cryptic Creations. They will do any PVC cage you want, any dimension. So I got these 8-foot long, 2-foot deep, 2-foot tall enclosures that have a sliding door on them. So there can either be 2 4-footers or 1 8-footer. And I've experimented with cohabbing falsies up at school, and it works perfectly fine. So I brought 2 males from school that I've been raising up that I wanted to go into the big enclosure, and I had two females here that I've been raising up here at the house, and the 2 one of the females here is het for lavender, and one of the males was het for lavender. So I put the 2 males together and I put the 2 females together, and then I went up to check on my son who was making weird noises. Turns out he was okay. Came back down to the garage and was like, they're mating. So it turns out that one of the boys was a girl and one of the girls was a boy. And anybody that's bred false water cobras knows the second you put boys with girls and girls with boys, the males do not hesitate. They just get right to business. So now I know that the males are old enough, and I still ended up with 2.2. It's just I had no idea that 2 of them were males. So hopefully there was not completion of the act. Otherwise, I'm going to end up with even more freaking false water cobras. And I don't need any more false water cobras. There's plenty of false water cobras in my universe right now. So that was my fun little stupid that went down over the weekend. So yeah, that's my update. Anything with you, Matt?
I sent you pictures. My mom actually came down over the weekend to help me rearrange the snake room and clean cages, which was awesome. Really helped out too. And in the process, I'm one of those people where I usually leave a couple of extra tubs open in a rack just for cleaning purposes. You just move the animals so you can clean them out thoroughly. And I'm like, I'll just throw these together. And talking about breeding and pairing animals, you try to do your best selectively, selecting off cycles. Sure enough, through, what was it, 2.3 Texas rats in a rack and 2 males locked up with females instantaneously.
Yeah, immediately.
I also had mandarins together, the Vietnamese, and all of a sudden they're hitting, banging, and sure enough, males are biting the back of the females, breeding in these just temporary cages that I'm just throwing stuff together because I'm like, I just need the space. I just need to get this stuff done. And everything's locking up, breeding. And then sure enough, my mom comes over. She's like, so what's this actually look like when they're actually getting it on? So kind of got like the full up frontal there.
It's good to share that with your mother, Matt.
Well, I mean, it's science.
It's science,
Someone
man.
has to show it. But a lot of cool stuff going on there. Still waiting on a number of clutches to lay, which is kind of interesting considering how many clutches I've already pulled. Some of the Japanese forest rats, I'm still waiting on 7 or 8 clutches still from those. And I think what happened, though, is the way that our weather was, up, down, up, down. Some of these animals have cycled later than typical. I mean, I'm still waiting for leopard rat snakes to lay eggs at this point. So, but yeah, I mean, that front was a busy weekend, but thorough clean, disinfecting.
Nice.
We've talked about that before with, some of the different, it was a perfect weekend to lay tubs out in the sun and just expose to UV and just kind of kill anything too as well. But a lot of up and down, and I surely felt it in my quads yesterday.
Yeah. No, it's funny you talk about things going really late. I have the benefit at my university of having a cold room. I realized I had the cold room about halfway through November when I was standing in the cold room, and then had I felt like a complete idiot because here I am chasing 50 degrees all over my garage, and I've got a walk-in cooler that is 50 degrees that I go in like 4 times a week. So I kind of hid, for lack of a better word, my red-spotted garter snakes because I knew Oregon red spots because they have to get cold. And I put them in some black tubs that nobody would know what the hell was in there. And they went into the cold room, and I brumated them for a long time, pulled them out in, when was that? Halfway through April. And it was perfect. All the females immediately turned blue. They all shed. My males shed. And I was like, all right, we're going to see copulation. Nothing. And then I was like, all right, no red spotted garter snakes for me. And then my sister-in-law and her partner came in for Memorial Day weekend, and it was kind of nice because he was like, hey, are you going to show me all these animals? I was like, you actually want to see them? That's cool. Because most of the people that come here, it's just like we deny that there are 80 plus snakes in this house. So I was walking around, his name's Justin, and I looked down in the Oregon red spot cage, and they're freaking mating, and it's like June. So I don't know what the hell's going on, man. But maybe I'll get Oregon red spots now, but they waited a long ass time to get down to business. So same exact thing you're talking about. Some things that are actually going pretty damn late here as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. They were in a beautiful, probably I'm looking at it now, the big naturalistic enclosure where I made the foam background and put in the soil and planted the plants and have the cork bark tubes. And then the damn enclosure got mites. And now nothing lives in it. The grass is growing beautifully because that's the joy of bioactives is when the mites show up, you have to essentially, you can either get the other species of mites that eat the snake mites or do the thing that works in my head, which is basically nuke the entire damn thing and start over again. So that's the downside to their code. So they live in this nice 75-gallon aquarium in my garage right now. But apparently that's where they needed to go to feel happiest and breed because they were in the damn naturalistic enclosure and nothing was happening. Now they live in this freaking glass enclosure with 2 boxes and a stick and everything's going great. So
it's like their real habitat.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a dump in Oregon. So there you go. Anyway. All right. So that's the that's all my updates. Any updates with you?
Oh, that's about it. I mean,
okay. I'm going to throw out into the ether at the beginning of the show this time. Grad students, hi. It's your friendly neighborhood graduate advisor that needs a graduate assistant. If you're interested in doing a herpetoculture experiment, look me up, message me. We still have a spot open. So I just spent 2.5, 3 weeks in Costa Rica. That might benefit you. Hint, hint, wink, wink. So anywho, that is all on that front. Moving on. So you ready to start this thing, Matt?
Yeah, I think we jump in.
All right, cool. So our guest tonight needs no introduction. We have Owen McIntyre with us from Rogue Reptiles. Owen is well known for being the Podfather's first mate.
Oh, well, that's just, I mean, no introduction, but I do like one every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anywho, Owen certainly stands alone and on his own feet. The fun fact about Owen is he keeps pythons, quite a few, and we'll get into that a little bit, but he also has a rather substantial collection of colubrids. So this is Colubrid and Colubroid radio. So tonight we'll be focusing on that side of his collection. But before we get into the nitty gritty of that, Matt and I and Owen thought it'd be fun to make the focus of the first hour of our conversation kind of a comparison of what it's like to keep pythons and colubrids, because while they're both snakes, all of us have kept pythons and colubrids. I have pythons up at school, and there's a bunch of boas in the garage right now, and short tails are in the garage. That's my dirty little secret that nobody knows about. But anyway, I just thought it'd be kind of a fun discussion to talk about the pros and cons of both, what it's like to have a collection. So before we get to that, let's first get the other snakes, the pythons, out of the way. What species of boads do you currently keep? And just give an idea of numbers and what percent of your collection they are, and all that.
Well, there's 35 species in the house.
There you
go. And that includes colubrids, boas, and pythons. So the whole thing, and then there's a tortoise. So, but he's over there. So that's that. With the pythons, a lot of it's Australia, Indonesian. So we're talking carpet pythons, olives, like all the liasis, water pythons. Then the psychopathics. So it's, white-lipped pythons, ring pythons. Then dabbling into, I have an Angolan kicking around here somewhere. So it's kind of across the board. We're Timor python. So it's a lot of Australian, Indonesian, and then it's, some wild cards that kind of stick out a little bit off to the side. Because there's a retic here for some reason too. So, but mainly Australia, because there's also rough scale pythons, and I have to mention them at least every 5 seconds. So
yeah, they're the obsession, correct?
Yeah, a little, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very much the obsession. I don't want a smooth snake, apparently, because I want the rough scale python. I want the bumpy Angolan python. I love every single colubrid that has a keeled scale. Like I just don't like smooth snakes, apparently.
Nice. So that's the python side.
Yes.
And then colubrid side. What's going on that front?
Sure, it's all over the place. It's a big chunk of Madagascar with all the 3 hognose. Then rhino rat snakes, a lot of Asian colubrids. So rhinos, Vietnamese blue beauties, Chinese king rats. Then it's like North American species. I have like black rat snakes, northern pine snakes, California king snakes, corn snakes. I have unicolor cribos. I just got my first mandarin. He's over here in quarantine. I'm thinking about what to do with him later. I have Baird's rat snakes that I just picked up that I'm enjoying the hell out of, because I have them set up. They're a little bit too big for my small colubrid thing, so I set them up in a cage where they can pass through tunnels and stuff like that, and they just sleep in the tunnel. So it's like, okay, whatever. Like, I could have given you a tube and you'd been fine. All right, fine. So got those. Yeah, that's pretty much the false water cobras that I got from you. Duh.
Good.
So yeah, the little bit the little bit more interesting of the Madagascar hognose is the false water cobras are just like that one level a little bit above them. I keep calling the Mad Hogs the Diet Dr. Pepper false water cobra because it's like because it's not a Western hognose. Like it will not wear a hat. But if you think of it more along the lines of a false water cobra, you're right in the mix with them. So that's pretty much the Colubrid set right now. And the problem is I keep wanting to add stuff. Like I was showing my fiance like 100-flower rat snakes. And I'm like, you want these, right? They're cool, right? Those would be awesome, right? And she's like, yeah, I like them. I'm like, good, that's checked, that's done. We can do that. Oh, and I just got my first Barons racer.
Barons racer, nice.
Yep.
They're addicting.
She's a shoelace that scares the crap out of me. So it's
yes. Yeah, no, you'll find with the Baron Eye that they're like they can be a royal pain in the ass with feeding, and then we talk about switches getting flipped. I've never experienced snakes that are like will not eat, and then I am now going to eat everything that is offered to me for the rest of my life, and I will never miss a meal from that point on. That's been my experience.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with. She's figured out the routine of how the drawer opens and how the food comes in, and I try normally feeding her the normal tongs that I use for everything baby wise, and she's up that thing chewing on my hand, and I'm like, okay, longer tongs for the Barons, got it. So there's one of those go upstairs. I'm like, so they're rear fanged. I guess we're going to see what happens here, and nothing happened, but it was like one of those. Cool, longer tongs. So yeah, won't do that again.
Definitely want the longer tongs.
Yes.
Yeah, that was like one species I got rid of just because of that. Because their food, I don't want to say aggression, but just their eyesight and watching and being ready for when the tubs open, and especially breeding hatch and raising up hatchlings. Those things are just like little darts waiting to come out, flying out of that thing. So I was just like,
it's going to be, I mean, they're one of those things where I was interested in Barons for a while, and I always was talked out of it because of the rear fang and the being venomous. And I almost feel like you need training wheels when you're going to start getting into anything that's above, I'll say corn snake or Nerf. Like, it's a Colubrid, but it's not a corn snake. Like you kind of, baby steps. Like, I needed someone to hold my hand to get into Asian rat snakes so I can finally start. Now I'm just like, these things are easy. These things are great. I love this. Like more, it's that kind of stuff. And I needed my hand held when I started with Madagascar hogs because they were rear fang venomous and all that stuff. And that was something that was kind of concerned me. And then I began to feel more confident. I was able to take that step to do the Barons racer. And I'm glad I kind of did it in stages because like Zach got me the false water cobra in the meantime. There was another stepstone. That was, you went from Madagascar hog to a false water cobra. False water cobra is maybe a little bit more punch, but it acts like a Madagascar.
So you were talking about training wheels and how, to properly approach rear-fanged animals, and kind of going through that process. I mean, how did you create your own program to create that growing aspect into raising and keeping rear-fanged animals?
It was starting small. Like I had interest in the Madagascar hogs, and I talked with Riley and I talked with a couple of the people about how potentially dangerous they were, and also what you had to kind of keep a lookout for. And then I got them as fresh hatchlings. My guys were captive hatched, my original pair. And I really kind of tripped myself into starting to be serious about them because I remember I was on my way home from Tinley Park and I literally opened up their little deli cup that they were in and one of them bit me. And then it was like everything floods into your brain all at once of, oh my God, that's what this is. You like this, you idiot. Like this could have been a problem. So after that, monitored, watched it, all that fun stuff. After that, it was like, all right, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to do it serious, like full on, hands off, hook training, this, that, and the other thing. And then I started kind of moving around with, well, the time when these guys are most excited is when food is coming. So if food comes not dancing around their cage trying to get you to bite it and kill it like every other python, boa, whatever, if it just comes like offered, here it is, sitting here, eat it, it kind of takes that whole excitement out of it. So my baby mad hogs were always flaring, doing their neck, their hood things and stuff like that. And I started feeding them just in little Pyrex dishes. I put their food in there and I just put the dish in there and I closed it up. Like it was open, dish down, close. No excitement, no dancing, no hitting the thing with a rat. And then this way, they didn't really get too excited. They don't really get puffy. They don't really get hissy. I have one male that if I hook him, he'll just puff out and he'll maybe kind of flare up a little bit. But other than that, he just rides the hook into the bin. And I started doing that where it's like now, because they're not acting like flying all over the place and flipping out, it made that easier, a little bit more confident for me to step into maybe potentially other species. And then also I did practice that with non-rear fang species, like my blue beauties and things like that, where, it's not, there's no danger. It's just a jerk. So, so it kind of takes that whole thing off. So I'm starting to do that. And that's something I'll definitely look into for the Barron's Racers. She's just too small right now. I want to get her a little bit bigger, but I do the same thing with the false water cobra, with the Chinese king rats, everything. It's just open the door, put the food bowl in, close the door. It's funny because you come back around and they have like a mouse, a chicken, and like a piece of fish all in their mouth at once because they just shoved their head in there and like whirled it around. Yeah, it works.
There's nothing like hooking a hatchling Barons, though. It's like, I think it's on. Oh, it's off.
Oh, it's where'd it go? It's like, yeah, I'm not. She already is like, I'm not sitting on this thing. I don't know why you're poking me with a stick. I'm out. So we're working on it. I have one of those 3D printed perch things from Specialty Enclosures. So I've been like just grabbing that with tongs and just picking that whole apparatus up, and she just is like on it, and then I put it in a bin. So nice. We'll get there. We'll figure it out. I want more body to her before I start trying to hook. She's just so small. So yeah.
Cool. So we ask everybody this question before we jump into the comparison part of this. But what about colubrids makes you want to keep them? That can be kind of a nice segue into pythons versus colubrids.
They were actually I've been keeping colubrids longer than I've been keeping pythons, but tell no one. My first snake was a Cali King, and actually my first successful breeding project was Cali Kings. So the colubrids were always there. The pythons came later. What makes me want to keep them, and that interest has changed, because I would say in college it was, I wanted to have all the colors of corn snake and Cali King. I wanted everything. There was all that going on. What's kind of pushing and driving the thing now is that I find a bunch of species really, really interesting, but people either have never heard of them or never seen them or think they are way too hard to keep or breed and this, then the other thing. And I kind of want to be like nuh-uh, I can do it. It's, I'll say I've had, I've pretty much had my door kicked in for rhino rat snakes in Pennsylvania and I even have family members who like do not want to go anywhere near the snakes, will want to come check out the rhinos. It's just something about their horn. I don't know what it is, but the Mad Hogs too. It was just something that this is not what I normally see. This is not another regurgitated color of a Western hognose that we're going to see. This is something over here. This is something off to the fringe. And that's what drew me to carpet pythons in the first place. It wasn't a ball python. It was fringe species python. So I'm starting to find more fringe species colubrids, and I'm dancing around and having fun with them. And I fear it's just a cliff. I'm just going to have like way too many of these things. So it's just kind of trying to toe the line a little bit.
That's how it happens.
That's exactly how it happens.
Yep.
The thing about colubrids is that There's so many freaking flavors, man.
That's the issue. That's what I'm finding is
there's paint job flavors. There's different enclosure types. Everything.
Flavors.
Yeah. No, you can go off. Well, just even like with one common species, like the thing about me is that I had all those weird, obscure animals. I had a collection very similar to both of yours with all the Asian rats and all that kind of stuff. And there was some weird juju about this house with the Asian rats. I don't know what the hell it was, but they would just drop slug clutch after slug clutch after slug clutch. And sometimes they would go off food. And I just got really tired of coming home after working with the animals at school to animals here that weren't working, for lack of a better word. So I thought, I'm gonna make life easy. I'm gonna get a bunch of king snakes. And then I thought, does that make you a loser because you have a bunch of king snakes? No, it doesn't.
No.
There's all these locality things, the natural history and the phylogeography and all that nerdy biology is all over these damn
I wish critters. I'd done more of that when I got into Cali Kings, because all I have right now is lavender stripes. Yeah. And Lucas is pulling like wild ones, and I'm like, you, God, I hate you. It's like, just bring it to me and be quiet. And like, so
it was amazing going through the collection on Saturday and I had 50 mice and 50 snakes ate 50 mice. This is amazing. Nobody's like looking at it being a pain in the ass, So no, it's just even the common stuff's tons of fun.
I would say that is the appeal of a colubrid over a lot of species of python. Is I have ripped my hair out smacking an adult snake in the face with a rat. You never have that problem with a colubrid. It's like, oh, food, cool. This is mine now. It's one of those things. If a python doesn't eat, there's so many things that it could be, or it could just be fine. If a colubrid doesn't eat, it's on death's doorstep. Something is wrong with this animal. It is and I've also been playing with the idea of like what to offer and what food to give the colubrids. And then also I found out that you can feed a carpet python a tilapia. Did not know that until I had larger colubrid species. I'm like, they'll eat it. Cool. And then frog legs or something that every snake in this place will eat. So it's cool.
No, and Owen, you said something in your comment there too that I just wanted to touch on that I think is somewhat important. Looking at animals that are available in the hobby, and sometimes even with wild caught animals, you never see captive born of certain animals, and it makes you start to wonder, and you go down this tangent of, well, why aren't people doing it? That's how I ended up now working with the white lip pythons, because and they're psychos. My thing was, I was just amazed that you don't see more captive born animals.
It's hard. I have 8 white lips, and I've been trying for almost 10 years now, and banging my head against that wall. But they're one of my favorite species, so I won't quit on them. But one day, God damn it, and then it's gonna happen. I'll be like, these are mine. They're not leaving. It's that. But then it's also like what you said. I wish you would see more species being produced, not just from the standpoint of then less will have to get kind of grabbed from the wild if they're still being imported, but also it can't be that hard. I think a lot of these things are just either they're a little bit difficult than your core species, or they only come in one color, so who cares kind of a thing. And I'm like, and that sucks, because then if the one guy who actually really cares about it stops doing it, then it's gone to herpetoculture. And what if somebody really gets interested in it? So right now they're bringing in the Madagascar hogs. I don't need to breed them, but it works, so why not? Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, because I get a lot of questions on the file snakes of, hey, I just bought these files, how do I get them to breed? And I'm like, well, are they healthy? Are they? And then you get a picture of them, and you're like, holy cow! You got more work to do before you even start to breed these animals.
Yeah, those are my favorite. I just bought this carpet python. Who knows what kind it is and how to take care of it? Isn't that something you kind of want to deal with a little bit before? Because I'll say that I jump into snakes, but that's after I've been talking to people, researching and poking around on the fringe of this species for a good couple months. Like, I'm not like reptile show, pretty snake, bye. Like, no, I'm on the fringe of it, and then I find it at a show or somebody hatches a clutch, and then I kind of take the plunge into it. But I would say more people than not are just like, they saw it, they think it's cool, and they're going to grab it and see what happens, and then realize they're in over their head in some species.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's, what is it? I mean, you don't see many of some of the different Madagascar colubrids that were coming in as wild caughts.
Yeah.
You know, some of the different arboreal species that came in high numbers and have just kind of disappeared now from the hobby too.
There's always one person who's got like a vine snake or one of the like look at this thing. I'm like, oh buddy, like you were well, that's not gonna go well. Like it's and they're striking, and I see the appeal, and I know what people are thinking, but if you got to be willing to take that kind of that's a huge jump and a huge leap to take something on like that's a fringe species, because there's not a lot of help out there, even if you do need it. Like all the people who are going to tell you if you bought it as a wild caught import, they're not going to help you. They're just going to be like, this is what we do to keep it alive until people buy it. It's like, cool. But it's that whole thing. So I mean, I probably would not have gotten my giants initially if I didn't have somebody like Riley who already had them, and he and I were already going back and forth about them before. So I kind of knew that even then, if I had questions, I did have somebody close by that I could go to. And I remember buying them, and him and I having like a 2-hour conversation at Tinley Park, me walking around about the snakes in the cups. So it helps with that.
Nice.
Yeah, I agree. Mentorship, you know, for some of these different aspects, and finding someone that you can really communicate and talk things through is a big part of the hobby in general.
Yeah. NPR has ruined that for me, because now I know everybody and a lot of people. And we also have guests on who are like, I love this snake. And I'm like, I love this snake too. And then it just, I'm not allowed to go shopping for snakes when we have a show, because then I'm like, cave dwelling rat snakes, bye. Like, yeah, no. So
nice. So are there any, in your opinion, striking differences between keeping a python, and let's just say Morelia, and leave it at that, and colubrids? Because I have Morelia, nothing like what you have, but I have IJs, your favorite, and coastals, and
the actual favorite. Yeah.
And in my experience, they kind of remind me of like a really big pitch ophis that needs to be warm.
Yes.
Like that is what they are to me. Yes.
That is probably one of the best, you know, bridges or like comparisons. Yeah. And the problem is that, like with colubrid species, if you have multiple different python species, you're all over the map. The only reason I'm able to actually even have success with some of the species that I have is because I can remove them from the room. And like you were talking about with your cold room at school and stuff like that, I have a separate area that I have my Timors, my olives, and then my breadlie winter in this room, because I let it, and my white lips are in that room too, and I let it drop much further because it's actually facing it's an exterior, it's got exterior walls and stuff like that, so it gets colder. The actual snake room where all the Morelia and a couple other species are kept are actually like, it's my basement's walkout, so that's underground, and then the other rooms are more of above ground. And I would say that they just need to be kept warm per se. Basically, you have a hard line at like 70. If you start dipping below 70, bad things are going to happen with a lot of python species. But there are ones that will just shrug it off. Like my breadlie, I have to get them close to 50 degrees to breed. Otherwise, they will just stare at me and nothing will happen. And they're spring breeders. So it's weird because all the python clutches are normally out by now. And now's when all the colubrid clutches start coming. And this is when the spring breeding pythons are going to come as well, too. So it's kind of like if it's a colubrid and it has to get cold, and if it's a python and it has to get cold, all the eggs will show up at the same time. So
Nice.
it's like, okay, like right now I'm waiting on like a couple corn snakes and an olive python. Like, okay, I got it. But it's, I would say that a colubrid is much more forgiving if something were to happen with its temperature. Just like how I think there are fragile colubrid species, but I almost feel like it's a reverse. It's never that they get too cold, it's they get too hot. Yeah. So like an Asian colubrid, you don't keep that at 89 degrees. Like I'm not going to put in my mandarin with a heat lamp. But it's the reverse for a python. If it goes below 70, you're going to get in trouble.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so, and even off of that, from just keeping some of the different pythons and attributes within the colubrid room too as well now, I really start to wonder, even on some of those pythons and boa species, if we aren't keeping them too warm to begin with.
I would say that's the one thing we definitely do. So. Yeah,
because like for my white lips, I keep those at about 80 degrees. My doom rolls, I keep at 78, and they're rocking and rolling. Even, some of the Angolans, my Angolans are only at like 82 too as well at a hot spot.
Yep. And it's my system's ramp. So in the python rooms and everything else, it ramps up to a hot temperature, probably about 84. And then at nighttime, everybody gets this. There's a night drop year round. So it goes 84, 70 degrees. And that's year round. And then when it comes to breeding season, the basement just drops. So they still get that 84, but then it just keeps going down. And then maybe won't get as high as 84. It'll maybe get to 80, but now the temperature is going down to 70. So the temperatures vary all the time in those snake cages, which is cool because in the morning when I do the AM check and stuff like that, all the pythons are out of their hides, sitting on whatever they have right underneath the heat panel, and that's where they're curled up. And that's where they go. But then when I come down late in the afternoon, everybody's gone. It's just I have a bunch of boxes that have other boxes in them. So, and that's what it does with the regulation. The same thing happens with the colubrids. They'll be out, they'll do their thing, and then they'll hide. It's weird because the pythons will all be gone, but then the Caribos will be out, and the hognose will be out, and the mad hog, and the blue beauties will be stretched out, laying out. So they kind of tend to come out a little bit later on, and they kind of have the same kind of heating as well, but theirs is not extreme.
No, that's cool stuff.
Yeah.
So that's like the similarities. What do you think is different?
Difference would
is there a different, is a python keeper and a colubrid keeper, are they really a different person?
It's really not just that different. Yeah, they're all snakes. It's just that you have to attack each species and figure out what it needs, and that's why you have a ton of overlap with being able to keep things in different rooms. There's no heat on my king rats. There's no heat on my king rats because they are in the they're in the top cages of these, which is a stupid idea, of this one stack in my python room. They don't need heat. They eat everything in sight and they bred. So clearly they're okay. But there's no heat on them. There's no heat on my Boads, just because the room itself is, the peak of the room is 82, 83 degrees because there's that many cages in there churning out heat that some species, they don't need anything. I'm not going to put any heat on the mandarin when it goes downstairs. But
it'd probably be a bad idea.
Yeah, I think it would too. Yeah. What? Cook. Yeah. Check. No. It's it just works out that way. Now the rhinos would probably be the only ones that I would be kind of a little more worried about. But when they were babies, I just didn't have them. When I was raising them up in a rack, that was right by the door and it didn't have any heat on it, and they were fine. Now they're in a giant enclosure in my living room. And come summertime, actually, probably soon, she's going to lay soon. Once she lays, I unplug their heating system, and it just is whatever it is. It is. So the air conditioning kind of keeps the house at somewhat close to a 70-something degrees, but sometimes the air conditioning gets overrun, so it's just going to do its thing. So, and the rhinos have been doing well so far too. So it's just figuring out there's not that much of a difference because I got boas too, and they're the same damn thing. It's just, I would say that it's fun to compare stuff because I keep my white lips, my rings, and my Dominican Red Mountain Boa and my Brazilian Rainbow Boas all the same. And they all need like higher humidities because they have fragile skin and this, that, and the other thing. And so they're all the same. And that's just across that board. And now I'm starting to dip into like, do the Angolan pythons need to go here to the carpet care or over here to the white lip care or over here to the like Timor python care? Like, where are you guys going to fit in this little scram? So that's pretty much what we got is you have different setups for different species.
Interesting. So thermally, there's kind of a happy middle part of the bell-shaped curve.
Right.
And then colubrids are going to kind of, if they have to skew towards cold or warm, they're going to be cooler.
Right.
And then pythons are normally going to be warmer, but there's outliers to both.
Of course. It's like there's like you said, it's like like a line, and then it kind of seems where you go, and you can find pythons and colubrids all down the line, and it just figures out where you're going to be. So
that's cool. Yeah, I have so when I was in college, I love snakes that live in water, false water cobras, Neurodia. It's a common theme. And I was like, it's totally logical for me to get an anaconda. So I went to the All Ohio Columbus show and bought a little female, fresh out of mom, yellow anaconda, who was appropriately named Anne, like most anacondas. And I raised that snake up and moved it on when I went to grad school. And I was the person that was like, look, it's biting. Like that was like that.
It's hurting me.
Yeah. That was not a turn off to me. I like things that have, I call it spunk. Other people call it killer instinct.
I call it personality.
Yeah. So when I decided to convert the garage here in the house to false water cobra land, I bought some extra enclosures from Cryptic, and they initially were the Blue Beauty enclosures and the Taiwan Beauty enclosures, and they were big because those snakes get big. And I moved those on, and I was looking at those enclosures, and I was looking at the false water cobras, and I thought, well, what lives where the false water cobras live? Yellow anacondas live where the false water cobras live. So now I have like a 7-foot female and a 5-foot male. But that's a great example because those are two, one's a Colubroid, technically, one's a boa, but they come from the same damn place. So their husbandry is exactly the same. Like, literally. And they're both like, when it's really interesting to me because when the falsies get too cold, so like one thing I have found out about falsies is they will go off food if their night drops too cold. Like that's the magic thing for them. It's not daytime temperature. If their night drops below 70 degrees, 68 degrees for like 5 days in a row, they stop eating. The yellows, same deal. They drop, my garage gets too cold. And they drop down below that, they stop eating. So there's an entire wall of my garage where I thaw out all the rats and then I go and none of the bastards are eating. But I know why. But that's a great example of where the thermal husbandry is the same for these snakes that come from two completely different evolutionary lineages. Of the snake family tree. So
they all live, like you said, they all live in the same area. So and it works out, which is weird. So and it's almost like even when you try to get to it of like, are they even on the same like longitudinally kind of like this area? Because if they are, it's almost like they can kind of survive in the same places as well, because it's almost like the temperate zone. It's when you get the guys who are like, I live down here at this little island in the middle of the ocean that no one can get to. It's like, okay, well, no, that one sucks. I get that one. It's that kind of stuff. Like it's that, and that kind of is the stuff that I really kind of, dig about this, is seeing what fits into my program here. Cause there have been colubrid species where I've had them, I've been jazzed about them, and they just don't do well for me. Was it copper black rat snakes hated me, radiateds hated me. I had to figure that one out. Like, I really like those. And then, but then I've also had python. My Woma sucked. It was just mad. It bit me all the time, and it kept laying slug clutch after slug clutch after slug clutch. And I'm like, all right, that's some things aren't going to fit in your whole thing, but it's cool to kind of see what can, because then if you kind of like this species and it fits in, awesome. I'm spoiled because I have my office here, which is where the rough scales live, and someone quarantines over here. So that's one like biome here. And then I have my basement main snake room, which is another biome. Then I have a soft out room where the colubrids are. Then I have a big room. So it's like I have a lot of different. If you don't fit here, I'll plug you in somewhere. Like if the mandarins don't do well downstairs in the snake room, I'll set them up here somewhere. I'll put them in my bedroom if I have to. She didn't hear me. It's okay. So
nice. There may be a musarana that lives in our closet in our bedroom. So that's
fine. Yeah. So I mean, there's options, and it's just finding what works in your with your style of keeping in the way that you like to keep, and you have to be a little flexible, but there's a whole big wide world of snakes out there. Like, don't limit to one. Like, come on.
Now, one area I do think there is a discrepancy between pythons and boas and pythons is feeding. Because the feeding frequency for most colubrid, not all, but most of them, it's higher, which then leads to larger amounts of crap.
Yes.
So in that regard, like the cool thing about the short tails I have in the garage, which are right next to the falsies, is like I check their tubs every 3 or 4 days.
Like, no, not yet.
There's nothing. And then I walk through my door and I'm like, something took an enormous dump, and it's not a human. And I know the blood python crap today. And then you go down, and those things, I don't understand how they can crap.
So would you rather clean up something? Would you rather clean up something every other day, or clean up one giant thing every other week? Like I get that.
Yeah. So like in that regard, now granted, they do release all the liquid waste. So I have to, I'm managing that piece, but I will flat out say that the short I mean, I'm not a python person. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I know that short tails are considered one of the messier pythons. Is that a fair statement?
That is a very fair statement. That is a very fair statement. I had short tails. They did not go well for me. They did not fit in with my system. They hated me, and I like drove that thing to Matt Minatola's house and like dropped it off on his front doorstep. Like, and I'm like, deal with this. And then he sends me pictures of him like cuddling with it and like stroking it. And I'm like, I don't see. She knew she didn't want to be with me. Yeah. So, and I will say it's one of those things where it's nice to walk down in the snake room and be like, no one needs to be cleaned today. Like, and then leave. When you have different species, that will never happen. So, I would say that like we had Carpet Fest here, and Lon and Matt and like Keith were coming, and it's like, okay, I'm going to show off my one blood python, and of course, like that's the day it's in like 2 inches of piss, and like it's just, and I'm like, why? It's like so I would say that it's definitely one of those things where you can get by doing both, but I mean, the amount of food that goes into a colubrid, they're just you're cleaning. I mean, I rarely keep colubrids on paper just because they'd be like, that's gone. That's gone. Like, you have to do substrate with them, just because otherwise you're just doing that. You're cleaning all the time.
It's disgusting when you keep them on paper.
Yeah, no, I hate it.
Yeah, forget Crebo's painting cages. Like every snake painting cages.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck happened here?
Yeah, I did the baby mad hogs when they hatched last year on paper for a week, and I'm like, this sucks. Like, we're not doing this anymore. I'm gonna figure something out. So I just like scooped up like dirt from their parents' cage and stuff like that, and I'm like, live on this, okay? I know they can do it. So
the falsies, we did them the first big series of clutches I got. We were trying to do sterile technique to teach the students. So we're like putting them on paper towels, and they hadn't shed yet. They were right out of the egg, and everything was fine. They were spilling water left and right because they're heathens. But other than that, it was not a big deal. And then we fed them, and then the spray painting started. And the students were they actually mutinied. They were like, absolutely not. We're not doing this. Like, this is horrible.
There was an uprising. No.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there was like, it was horrific. So they went to mulch, and then we threw little pine chip pellets in there that like kind of blow out like cat litter. But no, I don't. I that is one thing that I've never completely understood. The paper with Colubrid's thing.
No.
In any way, like at all. So
no, and then you're folding newspapers and you look at your hands and you're like,
oh my god,
I got blue hands now. This one's I got like the Sunday cartoon printed on my palm.
I would say one of the greatest things I got with my Python keeping was one of those craft paper rollers for my snake room. You just pull it and rip it, and I'm like, this is so much easier. What was I doing back in college? Right, stealing a ton of newspaper out of those dispensers. Like, that was a bad idea.
That's what I did.
Well, my college, they had free newspapers for the students. Nobody got them, so I just walk around and grab them all and leave.
I actually have a funny story about that. So they would put the paper out back when it wasn't digital in the early 2000s on like Tuesday. It was Tuesday mornings. And then I would wait until Wednesday afternoon to let the people that actually wanted to get the paper to get it.
Right.
And then I would systematically go to like 3 different newsstands on campus that were as far away from me as possible. Wait till no one was looking, grab every single paper, shove in my backpack. They actually thought that the readership was going up, so they increased the number of printing and bought more newspaper. Because I was like, wow, this is cool. I used my last newspaper from the school last year. Like, I had them amassed everywhere, and they fit a 28 quart tub perfectly. Like, there was no cutting or anything. It was fantastic. I just recently told the person who was doing journalism at the school that I did that, and they were not happy. Because I went to West Lib, so there's that. Okay, so how about breeding? Colubrid easier to breed? And I know when I say that, I'm talking about 2,000 plus species of snake. But,
yes. No, a problem is that, again, it's such a sliding curve. Is a corn snake easier to breed than a white lip? Yes. Of course it is. But are there colubrids that I have? They're driving me nuts. Like, I have unicolored Colubros, and I have had to date 20 eggs, none of them good. Really? Not a single one. And we just keep pushing that up the hill. And then I have my blue beauties. This will be the 4th year where they've chilled together and done nothing. So now I'm like, all right, you're gonna make me DNA test you bastards, because they're right in between that. Like, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl.
Matt can pump out beauty snakes like they're going out of business, but you and I, Owen, cannot
do it. Can't do it.
Yep. I got plenty of slugs, but no fertiles.
And that, it's funny having this conversation. It still brings me back to the aspect of having multiple males, where most people just buy one pair or 2 pairs. Yeah, where I like having multiple males, where you can run the males separately through them and rotate them out.
So I would say I have 4 olive pythons, which is ridiculous because they're huge. Yep. And I have my one male. It serves no purpose on this planet because he doesn't know what the female's here for. He doesn't care. Where's his rat? Like, when's the next food item coming? My other male will breed a piece of rope, but he will only really, really get upset when he thinks the other boy has been someplace where he wants to be. So
that's crazy.
Like, they're sitting there in the cage. My breeder male's in with my female. Nothing's happening. But the other male just chuck his shed in the cage. Now my breeder male is all around the cage. He's on top of the female, breeding the hell out of her. Like, it's that thing where it's like his purpose in life is to piss off and my other boy so that my other boy can make more babies. And thinking about that, of like I only have 1 pair of blue beauties. Maybe my male thinks there's no competition. Maybe he doesn't know what's going on. Maybe he's a female. Like, there's a lot of different things that might be going on here. But I would say that there are certain species that are easy to breed. I tripped and fell and got a clutch of Chinese king rats this year. How did you do it? I put the boy in the girl's cage and it happened. I closed the door and walked away. Like it was some of them are that easy. Other ones, they take more finesse. They take more working. They need more things. Eric and I talk about this all the time. With a snake species, maybe we've got like 5 triggers that'll make it want to ovulate and breed. And maybe for one species, you got to get one of those triggers. And they're like, oh, cool, eggs. Like 70, temperature drop below 70 degrees, and I haven't eaten in a month. Cool, good enough. I'll breed. Other species, it's like you got to get all 5 of them. Like it's the temperature's got to get low, the food's got to get down, the heat's got to come up at the right time. There has to be an abundance of food. The male needs to get some kind of trigger. It needs to be snowfall. Who knows? So there needs to be competition. You know, he needs to know what's going on. He needs to have access to the female for that 2 days where she cycles, because that's just how quickly their cycle moves. So there's a lot of things that might trip you up, and that's just across the board with snakes. So it's trying to find weird and interesting, cool ways to fix those problems is what I kind of dig about the rare species too. So
the thing that I like about colubrids, and I know that pythons are in this, this applies to them as well, but it's definitely a thing with colubrids. It's almost like there's like 3 definite levels, because you have corn snakes, which as long as you give them some kind of wintering period,
they'll breed.
They're going to breed. Like we have a giant colony of normal corn snakes at West Liberty. And we tried, I think it was 9. It was either 9 pairs or 13 pairs. However many pairs, all of them went. So,
13 for 13. Yes.
It was perfect. We are producing a metric crapload of normal corn snakes. But flood
the market with normal corn snakes. Yeah.
Like they were great though, because it was fun to watch the students, because I brumated everything here at my house. That's the one part of the equation I take out of their hands, because
it's the only part that might get messed up.
We got to do that. But even then, it doesn't have to. They don't have to get that cold. They're very forgiving. But that's what it's cool to introduce someone to herpetoculture with a thing like a corn snake, because in a lot of herpetoculture circles, they might be viewed as like too easy. I don't view them that way at all. They're like the thing that keeps you confident. It's going to work.
That is what I told Eric, is that I need more species that can breed with my eyes closed. So that I sit here and go, yay, I got eggs. Like that's all I want.
Exactly. Because I was like walking around with the students the other day. And I was like, we went 12 for 12. And then I was like, with corn snakes. But you know what I'm saying? So like you've got that, but then you've got like the next level up, which are things that you have to cool, or you have to cycle feed, which you have to cycle feed and cool with python. So like, there's a similar thing there, where they're not going to go every year. For me, that's Barron's racers. Barron's racers, they mate every year, but we don't get eggs from them every year at the university. So those triggers you're talking about, they have more of those triggers than the corn snakes do. And then there's other species of colubrid that are just like, nobody can get them to go. Like pseudoxenodon, and I don't remember what their common name is. They look like false water cobras, and they're from China, but they're not. That's a genus of snake that's a colubroid, but it's. People have tried to breed those many, many times, and I think there's only been a handful of clutches. But they come from an environment that has the exact same thermal climactic data as those corn snakes we're talking about.
What do you want?
So they're basically South Carolina in Asia.
Right.
That's where they are. So they should. We have the technology to cycle animals at that climate. But these things, we can barely keep them alive, because when you bring them in from the wild, they're frog eaters, so their parasite loads are astronomical. But even when they get established, people rarely can get them to produce eggs, and that's one of the things I love about colubrids is, if you want to have an easy year, go out and buy a crap load of king snakes, and now we've got eggs everywhere. And
it's like playing t-ball. The ball's perfectly easy. Right here.
We can go to these other taxa, and they're not necessarily going to go. So
but funny story.
I'm the opposite of you, Owen. I can get Poplin / IJs to breed, but I cannot get coastals to breed to save my freaking life.
Finally, I've met my other half to this whole equation.
I'm the yin to your yang when it comes to carpet. In fact, the damn Poplins this year, I brought them to my house because I cooled down everything, and I put govies out of my garage, and I looked at the the graphs, and I was like, oh my God, this is perfect for carpets, because it was like getting up to like 82 during the day, and it was dropping down to 60 at night. And like these beautiful temperature curves. So I thought, this is the year the coastals will go, and I'll throw those damn Poplins in there too. And the Poplins, like, I'm talking immediately locked, like the second they were put together, and the coastals cuddled, and I thought, okay, maybe nothing. And the IJs are really good at hiding eggs. I learned that.
They are very good at that. Yeah, them in
I
jungles.
kept looking at the damn female. I'm like, you didn't go either. And then one of the students, no, it was Miss Guthrie, the other Zeusite faculty member. She messaged me while I was out in the field. Actually, I was down in Costa Rica, and she was like, hey, that carpet python laid eggs, and they're not pretty. I was like, oh, in a cork tube, because I didn't tell you to look for them, because I didn't think she was pregnant, or sorry, gravid. So, but they're still cooking. But
they don't get to be pretty.
3 for 3 years in a row, 3 Poplin clutches, 3 times they snuck them by me. And I didn't know.
I had to outsource my Poplins to Jason Balin to even get close to having a clutch. And I walked around. I'm like, I produced Poplins. They're like, Jason did all the work. I'm like, I took the babies after he was done, and I raised my half. It counts. I'm like, but 0.5 me. It's fine. Like, it's it's whatever.
But with the pythons, though, is it? Like, I'm not good with pythons. I put those short tails together and nothing.
I don't think I'm good with pythons either. It's just I have so many.
Like they either go or they don't. Like, you don't get, like with Colubroid, you can kind of get some nuzzling, some of the jerky behavior when they're messing around on, like, near each other, that pre-copulatory stuff. I seem to always get that, but I may not get a clutch. Like the bear and I will do that, but we don't necessarily get clutches. But with pythons and me, it seems like they either go or they don't. Like those are your options. They're either interested with each other and you're going to get eggs, or they give 2 craps about each other's existence and nothing's going to happen.
Right.
But I have a limited experience. Is that
I would say
kind of true or not true at all?
I would say it's kind of true, because I mean, I would say that I have only ever seen one python lock this year. And it was from my gold-faced white lip. So it was like, oh, hello. Like, what's going on here? Like, what are you doing? And then I didn't see any of the other pythons lock, but I know they bred because I have eggs in the incubator. So like that works. Same thing goes with the colubrids. The only ones I saw actually lock were my northern pine snakes. But you're right, same thing. I put the male in the female's cage, jerking, moving around. There was some chasing going on. There's like activity. There's like, okay, you put a male python in a female's cage, he just kind of lays there for a little bit, and maybe you'll catch them courting or spurring, but that's if you get a really overzealous boy who wants to just kind of go right now. Actually, that's not true. I did catch another lock. It was from the rough scales. And that's just, again, because I was probably up against the glass of their tank all the entire time, like just doing a Garfield, like, what's going on in here? Are you breeding? Like, it was that thing too. But it's one of those things where they'll kind of curl up with each other. You don't really have a real kind of idea of if you're on the right track. There's a reason I bought an ultrasound, okay? Yeah. And this is the reason I bought the ultrasound, is because too many times I'm looking at a python and I'm like, are you ovulating? Are you gravid? The hell? Did you eat a rabbit? Like, what is going on here? So it helps with me of just being able to look at them and check it out and see, because I confirmed at least 2 python clutches this year. And then next year, what I'm probably going to do is go for one of my females that's really easy to tell when she's gravid, and I want to actually do ultrasounds the whole way through. Like,
that's cool.
Like, I want to see what the follicles look like. I want to like basically almost weekly ultrasounds to try to gauge it for my own, just so I know what I'm looking at when I zero in on this stuff. It's hard to ultrasound a colubrid. They're built different. I tried to ultrasound my beauty snakes and it just wouldn't work. Like, they were just they're just built so triangle-like almost that I'm trying to do it. And all I can see, like, that's her spine. Okay. And muscle. Like, I don't know what's happening in there. So,
and that blue beauty is like attacking your face.
Oh yeah, she was like biting the hell out of me. Like, whatever, just chewing my arm. It's fine. Like, just it's whatever. It's just is one of those things where you're exactly correct. You don't know if you didn't get a python clutch until after it sheds and you get past that 4-week mark and there are no eggs. So
that is definitely something that I like about the Colubrids is that when they are, not all the time, but when they are gravid, you oftentimes know.
Like, yeah.
I do this trick I learned actually as a field biologist. It was taught to me in my grad advisor, where you like pick them up and let them settle, and then you like follow down the ventral scales and bloop, there's the bread loaf. Okay, I did that with that because I don't have experience with pythons. That freaking female poplin this year, and I was like, all right, there's nothing. I've now come to find out that you don't do that with pythons.
No.
They just, their eggs swell magically when they lay them. I don't know what the hell's going on there and why she doesn't look fatter than she actually is. But anyway,
the pythons will also pop out their belly scales and have that kind of like square belly scale when they're really gravid. So when you hold them up like that, they it just goes uniform. And it just, there's no, this thing, you have to catch them when they're climbing in this weird angle to see them. And of course you're just like, did I just see what I think I just saw? And then if you try to investigate it, she tenses up and you can't. So it's a hit or miss thing. It's even worse with my Dominican red mountain boa. I never know when those things are coming until there are babies run around the cage. Like, it is. Yeah.
The live bears are fun.
Live bears suck. Like, oh my God, they're everywhere. Like, and that's the problem with my mentality. Like we talking about with the Chinese king rats. Eggs are here. I have this much time now to learn how to take care of a fresh hatchling. Boas, it's like, oh crap, they're here. Oh crap, like I have to do it now. So there's a reason I only have like 3 species of boa.
Well, and it's even hard too because a lot of hobbyists may not even be able to pick up when a female is ovulating in colubrids too.
Yeah.
But when you see it the first time, you're like, holy cow, you have eggs already? And you're like,
it's my big thing with pythons is that they trip me out a lot, a few times. I've had, and this is why I kind of got away from doing multiple males with one male with multiple females, is because I would take the boy because he's been in with this girl, they've been locking up and she looks huge. And I'm like, okay, cool. In with your next female. And I would do that with the other female. And then I would pull it. And then both females would go from this to, and no eggs from anybody. And it's like, oh, so I pulled him when she was ovulating. God, that sucks. Like, it's so that's why it's now, this is your girl for the year. And when she is 100% without a doubt gravid, then maybe you might get another girl at the end of the year. So it's had to change that whole thing. And I kind of tend to do the same thing with the Colubrids as well. It just isn't like male goes in the female cage. He's not going into another girl's cage until that's a slam dunk. And it just makes it easier with Colubrids to bounce out. That's why with the giant mad hogs, I actually have 2 trios set up. So there's a boy and his girls. That's it. Like, I'm not swapping it around. I'm not bouncing a boy between 2 separate setups of girls. I have 2 males and those are their females. So this year, actually, I swapped up. I changed the boys out so they both have different females. So we'll see how this goes. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, Matt? Because I know you've bred some pythons and boas in your day. Is there any kind of difference between the two in your experience?
I personally think that there's more observation aspects with pythons and boas that you have to be cautious of, especially monitoring while you have animals together for courtship. But I agree with Owen here. I mean, typically, and this is something that I hold strong to, especially now with breeding colubrids primarily, is you need to just have a male in there until you know 100% sure that animal is gravid. Because I think what happens typically, especially rhino rat snakes, for instance, I keep mine in colonies together. And you have to be somewhat careful of that too, because you have to be cautious of overzealous males with fighting. But you have a guaranteed access to that female during the optimal time, and those animals are going to pick up on those cues based upon pheromones, scenting, and it really just helps if you're trying to successfully breed a species, because in the wild these animals aren't going to be 100% together. You're basically giving the guy complete access to that female during that entire time.
And she can't really get away from him. Yeah.
And if he strikes out, man, he's got to work on his game, I guess.
Yes.
But the reality of like the hobby, what happens is you always see people offer animals as trios, right? 1.2 or, and a lot of people buy just one pair, or they buy a trio thinking that having an extra female is going to increase their odds. Personally, I've said during our last episode, I like to keep more males, and it's because of the same thing. It's just, if that male isn't doing it, throw another male in. And I mean, papers have been published in terms of competition of sperm with multiple males breeding a female. And it's a numbers game, realistically.
I think that's something we said on NPR. It's like, you're not serious, or you're not trying you're not really trying until you have 2.2. Then you're actually trying.
Yeah.
Everything else is like, well, maybe. So I mean, it's, I would say, having the multiple males, and it always seems like with pythons, cohabbing is like a bad word. Like, you're you cohab your pythons. What's wrong with you? And it's like, that's because I think that people, because most colubrid species or some colubrid species are smaller, and you can probably get away with cohabbing them in a lot of the setups that we have access to. In order to cohab a python species of a certain length, like, now you're looking at a big ass cage. But I almost feel like the same thing is that having that cohabitation or having access to the female when she's cycling is something that is a lot of these harder species breeders miss. I started putting tunnel systems in my python cages. So my Timor pythons each have 6-foot cages, but there's a 5-inch PVC pipe that goes through the side and is capped on either end, that if I need to, I can just go in there and open up the caps, and they have access to each other through this tube. And I've done that where I would just they would be in separate cages. I'd cap it, feed them, uncap it. They have access to each other. I did that all last year. Nothing happened, but I like it so much that I'm doing it with all the other species. So, and then I'm actually probably going to run my Crebo, because they're getting into new cages soon, and they're doing the same thing. They're going to have access to each other, where it takes me out of the equation of, like, the male wasn't in with the female at the right time because my dumb ass didn't put him in there. So now season begins, open it up, access. And then also kind of makes it so with higher stress species, like the white lips and things like that, they just get really pissed off if I try to manhandle them or something. Less handling, I open it, the male will go find the female when he wants her. So kind of moving that way with some things too. So,
well, that actually leads to one of the last questions I want to ask on this Python Colubrid Python discussion that we're having here. Is there a caging difference between the way you keep your Colubrids versus your Pythons? Like, I
mean, other than the paper thing we talked about, it was other than the paper thing. No, I mean, like the 4-foot, the 4x2x2 cage works great for a lot of things. And it kind of like, it gives you a chance to put a shelf in there, branches. I think colubrids will use. I love the colubrid thing, because the tree fell in my yard like 2 years ago, and I gutted that thing. Like, I ripped it apart, and there are pieces of it in all my colubrid cages, and they use it. Like, the pythons some of them could give a damn. Like, it's just like, why is there a stick where my plastic bin from Walmart is that I like to sit on? Like, well, I don't understand. So, but no, I mean, the same kind of caging. PVC works great. I'm probably going to move. The Crebos are getting moved out to these big finished wood cages because that's just what I have in 6 foot. But and the rhinos are in a octagon shaped tank that's taller than me. The rhinos are, so it's
nice.
Yeah, you can pick your poison. Each one's different, but yeah, you can do it in all.
The only thing that I've noticed, you kind of alluded to it, is that the pythons and boas that I work with seem to be very much like, I give them spaces like those. The yellow anacondas in either an 8 or 7 foot long enclosure that's really deep. It's like 3 feet deep, and 2 foot tall, and they basically hang out in their water bin, and then they get fed their rat once every 2 or 3 weeks. Big rat. Like, I give them one large meal because that's what they seem to do in nature more often than not, based off the papers I've read. And then the things will go lay under the heat panel for about 5 days, go back to the water bowl, take an enormous dump, and then wait for me to get the water. They're kind of goofy. My two do not like dirty water, so they will like wrap around the water bowl and look at me like, get this shit out of here. I'm like, okay. And then I'll take that, dump it in the driveway, give them water, and they're literally like sliding into
it as you're putting it.
And then they sit there. Like they and my carpets do the same thing. We have a green tree python at school that we got from Roanoke Zoo, and it has sat on it's in a nice big net. We keep it the way everybody says you can't keep green tree pythons, by the way. It's in a gigantic naturalistic enclosure, but it could really be reduced down to 1 stick,
because that's where it
literally lives on 1 stick. So that's a great example of, if you give a green tree python multiple sticks, it will live on 1 stick.
It'll find the one it likes. It'll use the other ones to get to the one that it likes.
But they don't seem to move. Like that whole ambush predator thing is. Now I do have one exception. This is you'll appreciate this, Owen. So when I was building the collection at West Liberty, I was like, I'm picking my pythons. So I bought a bunch of, or I didn't buy. We inherited, is the best word, a bunch of ball pythons. So I was like, okay, we'll have like the starter pack. And then I was like, liasis, and we're getting water pythons.
No.
I at the time was ignorant to the dichotomy between the Queensland water pythons and the New Guinea water pythons.
Angry New Guinea ones.
And I was like, I don't understand why people pay so much more money for a brown snake that's from Queensland, Australia versus New Guinea. So I'll just buy these New Guineas. And there have been like 4 snakes that have been kicked out of the Zoosci program, 4 species. Is one of them. And the Fuscus are now in my garage. And the New Guineas are. Now I bought another pair of Queenslands, and they are still at school. Like, there really is something.
No, they're really at
the difference.
I'm trying to breed my Fuscus, and Melissa's like, why? Why would you put more of these things on the earth? I'm like,
I will happily take any of the water angle, but that species, I will say, in my experience, does cruise the crap out of its cage. Like, they are not just sitting there. I mean, I actually like them because to me, they remind me of like an aquatic Crebo almost. Like, they're not like, I had them at school. We had them in Vivs. PVC enclosures, and this one female in particular was just so demonic angry at the universe that it started. The point where it had to leave and come home with me was when the kids would look through the door. They weren't through the door yet. They were looking through this little window on the door,
and
the Fuscus would pick up on them, and you could see it like bam, 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 like just literally smash.
Yeah, it sounds like mine.
I was like, okay, that needs to leave. And I brought him home, and she went to a quarantine rack. Interestingly, the big female now it's a puppy dog that occasionally bites you. So like, you'll be doing the hand over hand, I will, and she's fine. And then the next thing you know, she's hanging off my neck for about 10 seconds. And then she's like, all right, I had my obligatory moment of anger. Now we're going to go back to being okay, and everything's all right. So that's the one python in my experience that was pretty damn mobile like a colubrid. Now the colubrids that I have, I don't really have any that I would think are overly sessile. Like they seem to all move some point in the day. If that
actually was something really cool is this year when I was breeding, it turns out I have 4 northern pine snakes. I thought I had 2.2. It turns out I have 3.1. And the reason I find out I have 3.1 is because of, the other pair was not getting along with each other.
Yeah.
But I would say that what's really interesting is that during the entire breeding season, because female's cage was here and she's in with the male, and then across this little gap is the 2 other males in their cages. Every day I would come in and all the mulch would be on the other, like it would be pushed from the door to the back, and it would just be bare cage because they have just been doing this up against like all day after she lays the eggs. I don't see them. They're not there anymore. They're not like, because they used to be in the front of the cage up against the glass.
That's cool.
She lays the eggs. I have to go find the 2 boys now. They're in bins. They're in the back. They're hanging out. They're chilling. I'm like, okay, so the female that you was ovulating that you sensed is now gone. Like you don't care anymore. Got it.
Yeah.
Like now I know that I should, now we know what's happening here. So I have to confirm it, but I'm pretty sure I have 3.1. So yeah.
Those are the joys of the hobby, right?
That's what I keep saying to people. Breeding season is nothing but tremendous highs and gut punching lows.
Yes.
It's, just like, it's a good breeding season if you've only had 3 gut punches in 1 year. Like
yeah. So anything else you want to add to this? I feel like this was a pretty good discussion.
I feel like it's a pretty good discussion. And I feel like if you're either if you're a colubrid breeder who wants pythons or a python breeder who wants colubrids, do it and then figure it out. Like, you can figure it out. You got this.
So I have a
just
fun
don't
question.
use paper.
Don't use paper. Don't use paper.
Yeah, that's dumb. So then, are you a python guy that keeps colubrids or a colubrid guy that keeps pythons? Because we have to ask that question.
I refuse to answer.
Eric is listening, by the way.
I would, under the advice of counsel, Mr. Rob Stone, I refuse to answer this question.
That's fair. Because it will only be used against you for the rest
exactly. Anything I say would be used against me immediately. There would be some sort of Bigfoot like meme.
I
had to try to see what's happening. Yeah,
it's the cosmic octopus.
It is.
Yeah, there you go.
It's always the cosmic octopus.
All righty. Well, let's do a hard left to our favorite genus of the day, Leoheterodon, which are the mad hogs.
Nice.
I always get into trouble because I say mad hog and I am talking about the giants, but there are the 3 species: the giants, the speckleds, and the blondes. And you have all 3.
Yes, I do.
So the $1 million question is, why did you get what I like? This is you like your oddballs. This is definitely an interesting group to do, like swan dive into the deep end.
Yeah.
Which you've definitely committed yourself to.
Yeah.
So what's the deal with these guys? Why do you like them, and why do you have so many? There we go.
All right. Well, we can say that the first appeal is that I wanted false water cobra, but I didn't feel like I was man enough to get them or was prepared enough to get them. And I wanted something else in my collection, but I didn't want, at this point in time, like I had tried with the copper blacks, I had tried with the radiateds, I had tried with, Jensen a couple things. Like I had a bunch of stuff that went through the collection for a little bit and it just wasn't working. Either bad imports that I could never get going, or it wasn't the right kind of setup, but a couple stuff. And Riley had just had his success with his mad hogs and he had the clutch, and I was observing that and I was talking with him and I was they were on my radar of something being interested in. And then the opportunity presented itself and I got a pair. And it was, like you said, it was diving headfirst into a species. But I did have some hand holding with Riley and some other people who helped me out with that, but they were just interesting. Like they were interesting from the get-go. Everything was brand new. Everything was, that's not how a carpet python would do that. So, or a corn snake or anything. Oh my God. Yep. So, and it was a bunch of stuff that I could kind of play around with and get to, and they grew like weeds. I mean, it's just like the falsies where it's just like, I don't want you to grow quickly. Okay, thank you. Like, I guess I'll put you in that 6-foot cage now. Like, it's been a month. Cool, thanks. So, and it was just trying to see what I could do with, trying to almost like stretch my imagination of what I can do with these things and what you could possibly do with trying. And I just thought they were cool and that they were something that I might not see. And the Giants that summer, I want to say it was maybe the year after. So I think my Giants were about a year and a half old, and Madagascar like exploded. So blondes were everywhere, speckles were everywhere. And it was like one of those things that like I have that carpet python breeder fever. I can't just have one, right? Like I have to get the whole complex, right? So got the blondes. I had 4 of them that were sold to me as adult provens that were not adult nor proven. And then various replacing because I thought I had females, but I did not. So it turns out I had like 2 males and then a girl, and then I got another one that turned out to also be a male. So I have 3 male blondes, 1 female blonde. And then I have the pair, and then I got the pair of speckles because they're actually my favorite because they're cool looking, number one, and then they're so chill. They don't do they're not, they won't chase live prey. Like I'll put live rodents in there. My female will not. She won't do it. She's like a nest raider. So you got to put like a cup of like rat fuzzies in there, and she'll kill and eat all the rat fuzzies, and then she'll go back underneath a cork bark tube. Oh, like that's cool. All she wants to do. So she does that. So she only gets fed when I go, because I don't breed my own rodents. So she only gets fed when I go to reptile shows, and I can get a bunch of rat fuzzies, but she'll eat them, like 10 of them, and then she's gone. That's pretty cool. She's hiding underneath cork bark and stuff like that. So that's cool with them. So again, it's just, that's what kind of hooked me, is the observations of all these weird, because each one acts different too. So yeah.
So what do the blondes do that's unique to them? Because I have
jerks. They're just assholes. they're just blonde assholes. It's actually they're the ones who look the most like, say, like a Western hognose, but they have the neck flare and the hoods and stuff too. But unlike the Giants, the blondes never settle. They don't get as big, but they're like on point. They are always all up with it. And they're just jerks. I actually had to buy venomous tubes because they won't. I thought I had 2.2, and that's how I ended up having 3.1 of the blondes, is because 2 of them in the span of 20 minutes did a lot of damage to each other.
Really?
Like just, we're talking cuts, scrapes, all this stuff. Luckily, Melissa is a vet technician, so she's taking care of all the blondes, but they're biting me, biting her. It's like, okay, so tubes, and then we can clean. And so, but yeah, they're just fun because when their color goes from like either like a dull, almost mustard like, to this bright gold, like they really color up really nice. So they're really interesting. I like them too. So
now, Owen, just real quick, I assume most of these animals are wild caught animals or wild caught specimens.
I would say right now, both my speckles are wild caught, and then 3 out of my 4 blondes are wild caught. 1 is captive born and bred, and then my Giants, I have 6 in total right now, Giants, and 1 because Riley gave me his trio, and then she also came with 1. He also came with 1 of his captive born and bred females. So, out of my 6 adults, 1 is captive born and bred. The others are all wild caught. Oh, I'm sorry. My original 2 are captive hatched. So a wild caught female came, laid eggs, and that's where my original 2 came from. 3 others are wild caught, and 1 is a captive born bred.
Were there any keys to establishing the animals in captivity?
Yeah, because you have to play around with a lot of stuff. I mean, obviously, it was
I've worked with the Giants, and they're exactly a pain in the ass when they come off the ship.
The Giants that I have, that I cheated. I have my captive hatched, I raised up, and then Riley raised his, or was worked to his for so long that they came and they kind of plugged right into my system. But trying to play with getting them to eat and seeing what they go, like I figured out that one speckled only wanted to raise nests by trial and error and trying to get this stupid thing to eat anything that I would provide for it, because the giants will eat out of the bowl that I do with a bunch of the other thing, like one meal. It's got like a bunch of mice, some chicks, fish, a bunch like in this bowl, and they eat the whole thing. Blondes won't do that. They just would eat one item out of it, and then they leave the rest to rot. Speckleds, they won't do it either. So it's weird. You almost have to figure out what this snake will do, and then just what the snake wants you to do, and then do it. So I'm offering mice to the blondes and the speckleds once a week. And then the giants is usually every other week. They get a big, like, pack them full of food, and then that's it.
I had an import that I was trying to get established because for the Hognose Snake book, the editor, we were talking about the book, and he said, "Hey, why don't you just throw in those other hognose snakes too?" And I was like, "You mean the ones that aren't hognose snakes?"
Yeah.
So, anyway, but I was like, "Yeah, sure. What the hell?" Because they're oddballs, and I like that. So I thought I need to get those, and I have great luck until I don't. That's the way I explain it. I get them established, and then they would crash, and then I would do a necropsy, and turns out they're just loaded with trematodes in their lungs and various nematodes, roundworms, whatever you want to call them. And I could never get the flagell and all that stuff to clear them out. But one group that I couldn't get them to eat anything. And I had the falsies in here I was raising. They were actually in my office. And the falsies refused their frog legs. So I thought, oh, what the hell? I'll throw that in there. And these like shy, quiet little snakes that are scared to death of Zach come roaring out of there.
Dialed like up to 11.
Missed the damn frog leg and bit my shirt on my belly, and then was like ripping like this. I was like, okay, we're on to something here. This is what we've been trying to find. So I found that they would eat. I could get them to eat frog legs like crazy, which was kind of cool. But then I moved those on because I was just afraid with all the parasites. And then Jennifer Joseph, who we've had on our show, she got a clutch of giants, and I've got a pair from her, and I can flat out tell everybody that's listening that working with captive bred animals versus the import, like, we always talk about how it's so much easier. This is definitely a taxa in my experience, where it goes beyond night and day, because I have a male that is just like a corn snake. When I bring the rodents into the room, he smells it and he's patrolling. But my female's fun. She will not eat anything on her own. But she will assist feed everything and anything I put in her mouth. She'll try to eat. So
lazy
I
ass.
have to literally, and she also is full of piss and vigor and wants to like bite, which is great with them. But she's now growing. Once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I figured out the secret bullet. But my this diatribe's about this. Do you find then that, like, it sounds like it, once you kind of dial into what the individual snake wants, the code is cracked? Because that's kind of my experience with them.
Yes.
With just the giants. Yes. Now finding that code is a pain in the ass, but once you find it, you're set.
I would say it's across the board: giants, blondes, speckles, like whatever that animal wants. Once you key into it, it can even be as simple as, don't offer me the mouse, just open my cage and put it down and walk away. Like, that's what some of them might want too, which is my one female, the one that my one blonde that's probably going to lay like any day now. She will not eat off tongs, and she will not eat alive. She wants it on top of her cork tube and then leave. Don't just don't dance around it. Put it down, get out. And then she'll eat it. Now I'm kind of figuring how I kind of got hip that she might be gravid is the mouse was still there. And I'm like, well, that's not right. Like, it's kind of that thing. Now I have to go find you. Like, it's kind of one of those things. It's, I when I got into snake breeding, I have a pinky pump that I'm going to have framed my wall because this is a useless tool that every herper in the early 2000s thought they freaking needed. I am definitely in the school of I don't want to force you to eat anything. Tell me what you want to eat and I'll get it for you. That's easy enough. And there's so many different options. My friend Dan, you know him, Zach. Yep. Mm-hmm. He breeds button quail. And he will bring me over baby button quail, live baby button quail. And there's nothing that will get a snake interested in the world to eat than a bumblebee-sized bird run around their freaking cage. So, and that's for pythons and everything. So, one of my baby mad hogs last year would not eat, went for that. And then we've started. We got something. So then it was shifting them onto frozen quail. Then it was shifting them onto scented rodents. Then it was, here's your food. Then it was everything in sight could be eaten. So you just got to get somewhere to start. You got to get a handhold into it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what's you talked about the communal setups.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How does that work? Like, is it just a 4x2? Is it a drawer of a rack? Like, what are you doing on that front?
Well, it's weird because it's only the giants that are communal. I don't do the communal for the blondes because of bloodshed.
They rip each other to shreds.
Yeah, so that did not go well. So communal for them, and it's not communal like multiple males. It's trio communal. So there's no boy and his two girls.
Gotcha.
Actually, it's a boy and one girl because the other female is still growing up, but it'll eventually be two females. It's a 4x2 with a heat panel. One of those plastic bins you get at Walmart that has a little yellow top, like a 5-gallon thing. Yeah, that there. And then it has a water bowl, couple cork tubes or the flat cork things that they can get under. And that's it. And then they're all communal. And then when feeding time comes around, I have a spare 41 quart that that we were talking about earlier where you just have empty bins for that kind of stuff. It is a 5 high. So I will literally go through and open the cage, grab whatever mad hog I need, put them in the bins, and they're already pre-mulched and stuff like that. And I'll separate everybody out. So that everybody's got there's one in each cage, and then everybody else is in a bin in the rack.
Gotcha.
And then I give them their little bowl of food, and then I leave. And then come next day, figure out who ate, who didn't. Everybody goes back in the cage with each other. And that's what it is. And they are with each other all year round, all the time. There'll be this point where they'll all kind of be curled up together, and then you'll start seeing the male kind of over here, which kind of means that I guess they're cycling or they're kicking him out and away. They will set up in different areas. But come breeding season, come egg laying season, like I never even pulled the males. Or the other females. So, I mean, he's usually outside the bin, and then the females are laying inside the bin. And I have my second clutch of mad hogs. She laid the eggs on top of the other female that was in the bin with her. And they were just hanging out together and all that stuff. Because I took the first picture, and I'm like, people are going to think I'm insane. There's too many snakes, and then there's eggs. Then a couple weeks later, the other female did the same thing to her, the other one. Like, so they switched. So, it's no aggression, no scars, no biting, no anything. Even if there's food thawing in the room, they just, that's,
they get it done.
And I almost want to attribute that to the whole, like, I'm not opening up the cage and throwing mice at these animals. It's, food comes in a dish. So.
Do you do any thermal cycling with them?
I mean, some thermal cycling because I have their computer systems are more like a safety net. Like the heat system is set up to kick on if the cage drops below a certain temperature, which in this Python room it doesn't. So they're very much on the. I think maybe they get like I don't even think it's 80. I think it's like 80 degrees hot like during the day is what it's set to. So if it's too cold in there, it'll get it up to 80 during the day. And then it will not let the cage get below 70 something at night, which, inside, indoors, during the summertime, those computer systems don't even turn, those heating elements don't even turn on summer round. So they just sit there. So, but they don't really go no cycling out to the side rooms or anything like that. It's just I do lessen their food. So like the bowl during the summertime is like silverside fish, a frog leg, a large mouse, maybe, and then it's like whatever. Like it could be scallops, it could be chunks of tilapia, it could be whatever. That's what it is in the summertime. And then when we get towards wintertime, it's like there's less in there. There's like maybe a chick and a mouse. It is kind of lessen. And then one of my males did get a little chunky, so he's just on a diet. So he's just not getting a lot anyway, just because I don't want him to die of fatty tumors or whatever. So, but it's really weird and really kind of cool just to have that species where it's like I must be doing something right, goddammit. Like it's just like I'm like I do this every year. I wander around and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna get any eggs from these guys, or insert something here is not gonna breed for me to this year. And I'm sitting on 21 Mad Hog eggs at this point right now.
That's crazy.
Where I'm like, oh shit, there's another one. And I'm like, well, you know what? We got one clutch. I'm like 7. We got 7. So we got 7 last year, 7 this year. That's awesome. And then another female laid like 7. And I'm like, okay, 14, whatever. And then that other female, I'm like, she's not going to lay another 7. Like, is 7 the magic number with you creatures? Like, what has happened? So they're all in the bin, and they're all due in the next like 2 weeks soon. That's cool. So I'm like, all right, that'll be fun. They're such cool little babies. I mean, and comparing hatchlings, which is just like I have hatchling carpets going on right now, and I get a kick at a baby carpets coming out of eggs, but have something brand new that you've never produced before come out of an egg, and then just have one baby. It's just sitting in the egg, chilling, checking you out as you're checking it out. I loved it, and that of course has just got me hooked on like what's something new in my collection that I can breed this year. Like, you know what, carpets. Forget you guys. What else? Like it's. So I dig them. They're a really, really cool species. And I think if you're somebody who's into larger colubrids, false water cobra, stuff like that, they're right in that wheelhouse.
No, and I, just listening to you talk about the communal attributes of the habitat, I really do think you're onto something there too. Because more than likely the females are probably nesting together in the wild.
Yep.
And then male more than likely is protecting the eggs too as well from predators.
And I can't take credit because Riley was the one who really did the whole communal setup when he had that trio, and he was just the painting on the wall that happens every once in a while just kind of got too much for him, and he was like, please just take these. And I'm like, okay. I was not expecting these girls to transition that well, moving from his place in California to my place, and then even the younger captive born and bred female is starting to shift over to the way I do feedings of like bowls and stuff like that. She's putting on size, and it's really interesting to see how that's going to come along. And then by swapping the boys this year, I'm going to have completely unrelated stuff next year, which is even better. Cool. So we'll see how that goes. So
how are the babies to get going?
That's my next question.
Yeah.
Okay. It's the same rules. It's rules of everything. You offer frozen thawed normal mouse to everybody. Oh my God, you ate one. You're my favorite. You go over here. Like, and that's all you will ever see now for the rest of your damn life. Like, that's it. But then you got to get a little bit more interesting. You got to thaw it out with a chick. You got to put some chick down on their heads. You got to, there's Rodent Pro does quail. I forget the species, but they are the perfect size for baby carpets and baby giant mognose, because they're big babies too. Like they're not small. They're not talking corn snake stuff. So some will take that. My friend Chris Salemi works Bronx Zoo. He breeds carpets, stuff like that too. He also breeds knobtail geckos. And the best thing about knobtails is that they don't eat their damn skin. So I have a bag. I had a bag last year that he sent me, and he actually sent me another bag this year of just gecko sheds. Wet hopper, take the gecko shed, just wrap it around the hopper. Some will eat that. I had to start getting creative with, out of the 7 babies that I had last year, I had to get creative with 1, which is creative. I mean, buying a lizard to try to feed it, or buying the live button quail from Dan. So that was as creative as I had to get with those. And I did lose one, but that one had already started eating. So I don't know what happened there. It just kind of keeled. But everybody else, and the same thing happens like we were talking about before. Once they start storming, it's one of those, you open the bin, drop the food, close the bin, and then you hear a ruckus in there as it like attacks and kills it. And it's like, okay. But it wasn't hard. I've had harder carpet clutches that pull my hair out. Now that, of course, is I've been breeding carpets longer, and I was inexperienced when I started. So, it's cool. I enjoy it. You know, they're nice. They're not horrible. And I just set them up in I just set them up in a 5-quart hatchling rack with my carpets, and they were on the same temperatures as the carpets, which is like 84, 85 degree hot spot, but it's back heat. So that if they got, and they would hang out at either end. They didn't really care. They wasn't like anything was really affecting them. And it went well.
What about incubating of the eggs? I mean, anything special or unique?
They're on a bin at the top, on top of my python cages. It's wet, like almost to the point of clumping sand, vermiculite. Eggs right on that, covered in damp moss, in a bin on top of the pythons. That's what I do with the pine snakes, corn snakes. That's what I do with a lot of the colubrid stuff. And so far, so good.
Nice. Yeah, I just bought a brand new sea serpents incubator, and my grad student Alec was like, you know, you could just put the eggs on top of the bins at the top of the room. Shut up,
put them there.
Yeah, and then I zap it up there, and I'm like, oh, it's like 80 degrees up there. Huh? How about that?
It's hot up there. It's like,
that's interesting.
That's just what I've always done, and it's one of those things of like, see if it works. And then it worked. And I'm like, all right, we're not going to change anything anymore. Like, if that first clutch had bombed, that'd have been like, all right, we can't put them there. So, but I like, it's going to be interesting because I say if, and that blonde female's huge. So I say if though, because you don't count it till they're here. If there are blondes babies this year, I want to see the comparison of the two, because I do have one male that I bought as a hatchling, but he came to me on gecko scented rodents. The guy actually gave me a cup of day geckos. He's like, feed them these. So I'm like, oh God. So, and I had to do scenting and stuff like that with him for a while until he transitioned over to unscented. But I want to see kind of if the blonde babies come out, if they're any harder, if they're any easier.
Are they really small?
Yeah, I mean they're
I
on the small
think
side.
I saw the babies that you bought.
Okay,
because the guy, if he's from Pennsylvania, he's probably the only person that produced blonde hognose snakes, and he also
owns like a pet store.
Yeah, and he produces Mexican hognose snakes, and I got some Mexi hogs off of him. But I was looking at the blonde hog.
I got one male, so I got him.
I was thinking, man, maybe. Yeah. Then I saw the price tag on those puppies, and I was like, yeah, no. So
he caught me at a right time where I sold a bunch of pythons. But then now, of course, I'm sitting here with 3 males, and I'm like, yeah, buying the boy was the great decision. Yeah. So it was awesome, good. So now I have my other 2 boys are now scarred up because of what they did to each other. And I'm like, thank you. Your price tags have now plummeted. Good job, guys. So, yeah.
So then are there any just like final quirks to Leoheterodon that you've noticed now that you've kept all 3 and you've produced 1, definitely, possibly 2? Mm-hmm. Is there something that just someone getting into Madagascar hognose snakes, if you could have known it back before you got into them, that you would want them to know?
That they're most of the time they're big bluffers, like with the hoods and everything like that. They are huge. The like, don't touch me, don't. All right, fine. Like it's like you just scoop it up. It's I'm defeated. Like they are huge bluffers and stuff like that. But do not like my blonde got me on my hand a couple days ago. And that was just because I got distracted by the fact that she was gravid. And she's never shown any kind of anything like that. And I'm like, I'm like, damn it. Right. So as cool and as everything that they are, do not kind of let your guard down on that whole part that they are still the rear fang, and definitely know what is in your capability. And, you know, whether you are reactive to that kind of stuff, because that can be very bad. But other than that, I mean, they're so much fun. I enjoy the hell out of them because they're very intelligent and inquisitive. My giants will track me around the room. So they'll also do that, like hopping, like the spy hopping, they will slowly raise themselves, like the periscoping. I'm walking around and then like slowly coming up from behind the bin, and then when I'm not coming to their cage, just slowly back down. It's like, okay, bye. Like, so they're so much fun. So
that female that I have needs to be assist fed and is extremely cage defensive. You can't see it, but like literally right here is a wall of PVC enclosures. And they were there until I moved them out over the weekend. But I would be typing in here in the morning before their lights came on, and the lights would come on, and then the snakes come out and do their basking and And I would start feeling like I was being watched. And every time I would look at her enclosure, and there's this like little snake, because she's not that big. She's only probably 15 inches long, but she would periscope half of her body up and just be looking at me. And the second that I make eye contact with her, it's just like,
gone,
shoot, right back down again. And then about 10 minutes later, in the exact same spot, like slowly run. and like the food monkey's still there. What the hell's going on? No, I'm not proud of it, but I was, because I have to assist feed this damn snake. I have done the gamut: live food, frog legs, fish, tilapia, the whole thing. The only way she will eat, but she will eat every freaking time, is if I grab her, put the food in her mouth, and she like, I can tell she's trying to envenomate it. It's not like num-nums and the tum-tums here. It's, I will kill you. Like, that's what's going on. Well, I was on the receiving end of the I will kill you. I was pinning her gently pinning her. And my wife busted into the room, which she never does, and thought something was out in the living room. Turns out there was nothing out in the living room. A book fell over. But when she came charging in, I lost my focus. This is why I will never own an Lapid or a Viper. I've said this.
I can't.
Before.
I can't.
Never gonna happen.
No.
And then, well, bam! I mean, and I knew immediately, like, this is gonna be bad, because it is. She's doing what she does to the mouse, and it's the only time in my life I took the snake, and I'm like, I will not let you chew. Like, I just stopped.
Stop
everything.
Stop what you're doing,
like,
please.
Kathy, we will address whatever issue you have in approximately 6 minutes, because that's about how long it's going to take for me to get her off of me. But please let me focus on this. And then, I got it off, and it didn't do anything, because Jen Joseph, when she was on her show, talked briefly about Mad Hogs, and she mentioned that she got bit by a baby, and it kind of felt like getting walloped by a hornet. And I've heard some other people say that if they can get the fangs in, chew a little bit, it's painful. So nothing happened to me, thank goodness. It was the craziest snake bite I've ever had, actually, because I could see the fang. I could see her trying to move her front,
trying to get it in there,
up to get it in, and I'm like blocking it with the hemostat, trying to get my wife to walk out of the room slowly. Like, it's pretty damn intense.
It's I would say
so. Yeah, you got to give them tons of respect. I will say that.
Yeah, my one baby that got me, my original female is the one that got me in the car because I'm an idiot. It was my finger. It did swell up and it kind of itched. Yeah, and that was maybe for an hour, and then it kind of went away. Yeah. So I don't know. I haven't had any other issues, but you can't fall asleep on them.
No, you can't. Yeah. Have you had one growl?
It's
not a hiss. It's not.
No,
like,
it's a growl.
It's kind of a hissy growl, which I've never had a snake do besides them.
I have my one male who is just, he is nothing but puffy, and he'll throw his enormous weight around all the time, and he doesn't want to go anywhere. But then once he's on it, he's like, oh damn it. He was the one, actually, I was putting him into a bin because he happened to be the one that was right in front of me when I was separating for feeding, and he did actually do that kind of low rumble.
Yeah.
To the point I'm like, what the hell? Because I thought like, I don't know if I squeezed him too hard or there was stuff moving around. I'm like, what was that? And it was just like, all right, if I come back here and you're dead later, I'm gonna be really pissed off. Like it was, but it's weird because it's something that you don't expect.
No,
it's like when nobody prepares you for the baby geckos scream. So when I hatched leopard geckos the one time, I'm like, I wonder if they've hatched. And I went to move the moss, and it's like, bah! I'm like, what the fuck is that? Like it was, not prepared for that. So yeah, I had one growl once, and it was just sounded like almost like almost like stomach rumblings. Yep. Like it was stomach growling. Yeah, it was weird.
No. Well, this has been absolutely excellent.
Yeah.
So we definitely have to have you back on because this is when you get to let your real love out into the universe, though. And
it's the only place I can come and actually talk about my true passion.
Yeah, you're not being beaten back with a hypothetical stick. So.
And if I had just gotten into dwarf monitors like he wanted, I'd be his best friend again. Yeah, but this will be the rift that will destroy us. Yeah.
Well, you can introduce. Here's what we can do. We can arrange an introduction. Sorry. Eric can bring the Ackies and the Kimberleys over, and they can play with the false water cobras.
And we'll see who wins.
You'll have your friendship back again. I guarantee you, a falsie looks at a little monitor, and if it's put in a box and the monitor can't run away, the poor little monitor will no longer be with us. It will be converted to falsy poo within the next 3 days. Not that I'm condoning that in any way, shape, or form.
But
I'm just simply saying that might be a way to get Eric back.
I will tell you that the mail I got from you is he's got a clock in his head and he's okay. He's like, all right, well, everything's all in good time. The female, she's got a timer, and if her food is not in front of her in that time, she turns into a psychopath, and to the point where I'm opening the door and I'm like presenting the food bowl like this so that she can grab what she wants and then go back into the corner so I can put the rest of the bowl in. And it's just like, okay, I'm sorry.
That's the girls in general with falsies. They are definitely different. And to be honest with you, going all the way back to the beginning when I screwed up and thought that I had the two males were the males and it turns out one was a female, within like 10 minutes of me realizing I was just standing there dumbfounded in the garage where these things are. And then I started thinking about it. I was like, you're an idiot, because that supposed male, the second I would she could see the rats, she's just smashing up against the glass trying to get to it. And that's anecdotal, but I'm pretty sure I've got enough of these damn things that I could make it statistically significant. But the females definitely have a stronger feeding response, and one of the ways you can tell a falsie is, guys, so you think that response is great now, wait till you breed them, because then they're hoarding protein to yolk up the 30 freaking eggs they're gonna lay, and then they're insatiable. That I've said this before, but it's my favorite thing. Like near the end of the spring semester, I have we people that went to college, just that we know this. If you're a student, you're done. You don't want to be there anymore. If you're a professor, though, what people don't understand is you're done too. You don't want to be there either. No one ever talks about that piece. And the falsies are right in the doorway of my office. And the females are at their absolute their craziest level of crazy during finals week, because they're going to lay eggs in the next week or two. And kids will walk in, and all the false water cobras see is a flash of flesh, people's foreheads, and it just bam up under the glass, and I kids just drop right in the doorway, and then I have to sit there and be like, "Are you okay?" There might be a part of me that's laughing hysterically and maniacally on the inside. So they bring me great joy. and a little bit of respite with that. Now, the kids that know me, that they've got these snakes. 2 of them are trying to eat them, and they just don't care because they know it's coming. Yeah, I don't do anything to like to get people over ophidiaphobia. That's for damn sure.
No.
So
that was
anyway, but I digress. Well, anything else you want to? Well, I got one final question.
Yeah.
And then we'll call it a day. Are there any? What All right, I know there's more, so we'll limit it to 2. Are there 2 species of Colubrid you see yourself getting in the next 12 months, or is it like we've got to focus on all these life events?
We're talking about brand new species, not completing pairs, right?
Brand new species, yes.
Brand new species, 100-flower rat snakes.
We might have your guy right here.
I know. That's why. Listen, I am the person. I will not contact you until I'm ready to buy, because I sell snakes and that pisses me off. So, so if people are like, well, why hasn't he called me? He's not ready yet. There's a reason. There's a reason. Don't worry. 100-flower rat snakes are a definite. They are so far on my radar. It's ridiculous. I'm chomping at the bit for those, and those will be the things that, like, if it comes between them and the blue beauties, bye. Like, the blue beauties are gonna, like, you failed me so many times. Next, like, it's definitely them. And then I keep this is an idea that's gnawing in the back of my head, and I need to kill it and kill it dead very quickly. Otherwise, it's going to become a very bad thing. And that's you've done well with the Mad Hogs. Could you do Easterns? And I'm like, no. We don't do this. Please don't do this. Like, and I mentioned this, and then one of my friends is like, hey, this guy breeds Easterns. No, I don't even want to open this. Like, it is.
I know the Eastern breeders.
That could be a very slippery slope there, because they're gorgeous. They're gorgeous animals.
Yes.
And if the main thing is like, but they eat toads. It's like, yeah, but like, I've been doing all this other crap. Like, how far is that? How much of a step is that in that direction? So, yeah, that one I have to kill. I have to kill that quickly.
Yeah, we can talk Easterns another day, because I can start talking about those things. They're a favorite and a bane of my existence.
That's what I fear. Breath. Yeah, is that they'll become so.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. In my experience, they are the classic example of they are doing great until they're not, and then they're dead.
They're gone. Yeah.
There's like no slowly going away now. It's I'm eating, now I die. Like, that's just the way that they have been for me.
It's like a chameleon. It's just like all of a sudden it turns black and falls off the stick. What happened?
And we could have them here in West Virginia, and then they pass the herp regs, and they're a native species, and now you have to do, all these things. And I'll fully admit, like, there was a part of me was like, so I'm not allowed to have these things I keep spending hundreds of dollars on to have them decay in my backyard when I bury them after they die. This is probably an okay thing. So, like, that was one of the snakes that was taken away from me with the herp regs, where I was like, yeah, okay, now I have an excuse.
All right, I agree.
To not touch them again.
Actually, I didn't even think about that, because last time I did my lessons for PA, I have black rat snakes, and I had to put down that they were a mutation, because they're white-sided black rat snakes. So I might not even be allowed to have.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. I might
Good. We'll put that in the same box.
Saving you lots of money,
right?
Because you can't. And I will say this to everybody listening, and I will die on this hill. If you think you can go out into the wild and pluck a wild Eastern hog and have it magically eat laboratory mice, you are the literal definition of insane. That is not going to happen. That is an animal that is hyper evolved, or that just leave it alone and put it back in the woods. Like, that's
Eric's like, well, why don't we saw a bunch of toads last time we went in the Pine Barrens. Just go get toads. What? Like, just go get the toads. Go get wild toads to feed to mice. What is wrong with you? Like, he's like,
yeah.
I'm like, go play with your lizards. Get out of here. So.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, man.
People want to find you. If they don't know where to find you,
what
they haven't listened to a podcast, but where would people go to find you?
All right. You can definitely go to rogue-reptiles.com. Also, rogue_reptiles on Instagram. All animals that are for sale will be on there, as well as the Morph Market site. If they're not there, they're not for sale. I'm sorry. I'm not hiding things from people. I want them gone too. So it's, but those will be the only things. couple shows in the tri-state. I'm not really vending, but I might make appearances. So if you are Pennsylvania, Maryland, New York, New Jersey area, and you want something, you want to link up at a show, just let me know. I might be going. So,
Cool.
yeah, that's it. So, but no, guys, this has been awesome. Thanks a lot. And I'll definitely think of something. I'll get more Colubrid so I can come back. I promise.
We'll have you back on. Yeah. You got to get your Colubrid time in.
I do. It's like it's like a shot in the arm to keep doing this Python stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Keep pretending. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, people that want to find me, I'm on Instagram, Dr. Crawdad. I'm on Facebook at Zach Loafman. And then you can always look me up online and go the old school way and shoot me an email. Got lots and lots of false water cobra eggs cooking. So if you are interested in those, please message me, because as soon as they hatch, they're going to go up, and yeah, I'm ready to move them. We have one clutch that's hatched, and they actually are doing their post hatching sheds, which means we'll be putting frogs in blenders this week and dousing the pinkies and the fuzzies in those, because that's the secret to get them to eat.
Yes, write that down.
And then they're down. They're like good to go. Oh, it's in my book. I have a recipe. So,
excellent.
There we go. Matt, where do people go to find you?
You can find me on Facebook or Instagram with Serpamitra.
All righty.
Sweet.
So this has been another episode of Colubrid and Colubroid Radio. Whatever time of day it is, hope it's great for you, and have a great one.